Well, the importance of sunlight. The plants don't grow, the crops wither, the trees die. There's no food. If there's no food, there's no human life. If there's no sun, there's no daylight. That basically meant you're in the dark, or such light as left in the sky by the heavens, the stars and the moon. Well, the moon won't be reflecting it, so that won't be there. So the importance of sun worship. You can see it, can't you? Life depends on it. I worship what my life depends on. You could say enlightenment sees my dependence upon some fantastic creator being that put the universe together, and myself. Well, the safest relationship to such is that he is my parent. Obviously, I'm not his ability, so I can't say I'm the same as God. But if I'm a child of God, at least, well, it's more than at least, that sort of power and ideally loving kindness. Else, I don't stand an earthly. So he's a friendly God, he's on my side. I'm his child. Well, that's the best relationship I can imagine. In uncertainty, there's nothing better to imagine. The rest is less than a shadow of light by comparison. So, well, we see him perhaps in the Jesus, Christianity thing anyway. It's seen as a light of the world. I'm come a light into the world. Sunday, the day is named after him. In the ancient world, Saturday was the Sabbath for the Jewish people. But Sunday was the real holy day of the sun, on which your life depended. Solar Invictus, Constantine. Of course you can worship on a Sunday. That's just fine. That's our great tradition. And you, as a peculiar religious group, are going to keep the Sabbath, the seventh day in your reckoning. Well, we celebrate the beginning of life. You presumably celebrate the end of it. Oh well. Of course, I don't know, but in English terms, Jesus being the Son of God, well, that's rather convenient coincidence of words, isn't it? We can worship the sun again. Oh. Of course it's primitive religion. All religion is primitive. It's for children. It's to give some sort of structure that they can handle, to make sense of their world as they see it. When they grow up, they're no longer religious. They seek their God, the personification of their own values, as far as they know. And they don't know very much, of course. We're all children to that extent. We learn by hearing, by observation, and hardest of all, by bitter experience. And our values are adjusted accordingly, and the only God you can love with all your heart and soul is the personification of your values. Else you're alienated from your own God. So you could say we all have different gods. Yes, but if the reality is that we all have, in true reality, the values have to be the same for all of us. The values that give you life, the same as the values that give me life, presumably because we're both human, but perhaps all life requires such values as to survive or nothing happens in this universe. there's good and bad in this universe, which would be inconsistent as we see it with the God who rules everything and is good. Why would he make bad? Perhaps it's not bad. Perhaps, Mum taking me to the dentist is not actually bad. I don't want to go and I don't fancy the pain. But she says it's what I need. And it'll stop it hurting in the longer run. So what I see as bad, she knows is necessary to bless me into good adult life without having a mouthful of rotten teeth. Of course, she's a child and didn't realise that the amount of sugar she was shoveling in probably was doing nothing good for my teeth. But she did realise that the pressure of society to do what society does is very strong, and to go seriously against it makes you just weird among your fellow human beings. I played, I think it was my last recording here, to a friend of mine who is, you would say, very secular mathematician. And because he was sitting next to me, I was almost listening to it with his secularity in mind. And, well, I was amazed that he didn't show too obviously how appalled he was at what I value and what I say in my recordings. I expect he can't imagine how I could possibly have been an academic. But clearly I am. It's a sort of, just, that's even worse, you know what I mean? Of course, at one time in history, the only academics were religious. I mean, Plato is, I was amazed when I was reading Plato how often it referred to religion and the gods and all that, and sort of thought, is this what Plato thinks? It's not what I was expecting from a philosopher, because of course I was as secular as they could come. Well, from a decaying Christian culture, of course, but I was pretty secular, mate. I knew every reason why God couldn't exist. And there was no uncertainty in my mind. I was right. Whereas now, well, I'm sure believing that God exists is the way to go, but I'm just as uncertain, of course. Because uncertainty is not what you do know, but what you don't. And what you don't know, you have no idea the importance of, or the breadth of, or the complexity of, or you just don't know. Instead, we look at what we do know and think, well, I know this, and therefore I know what is to be known. Well, that's a very childish view of things, isn't it? Kids always know better than their parents until they come unstuck, and then, perhaps Mum and Dad were right. Oh dear, again. But they have been wrong. I was right over so-and-so, and they weren't. Thank you, Heavenly Dad. Oh, this is next day. It's early in the morning. What's the time? 4:27. It's dark still. Laying in bed. Thought I'd review this recording that I wrote yesterday evening on reflection of the previous then recording which I'd played to my friend. Well, I suppose what I want to say is, in connection with this recording, what matters between the child and the parent is not whether the child's right or wrong, or really whether the parent's right or wrong. What matters is child having the conviction that the parent loves them, provides and looks after them, meets their needs and somehow gets them through. I mean, in adult terms, protects and provides, loves and cares. And, we know this is what the child needs. And if the child doesn't have this, and especially if the child realizes they don't have this, that could be devastating to their development and upbringing and growth. And if they survive to adulthood in such a sad state, well, the result could be an appalling character or an appalling state, depressed life and just not fitting somehow. We've come to the conclusion as people, adults that have been children, that children need this love and care, protection and provision. And I guess societies have had a culture which does this. If we imagine a culture that doesn't, I think it's hard to imagine what the survival state of living will be, if at all, in even the medium run. Been experiments with children, of course, like the Nazi experiment of bringing up master race, and well, I don't know what the adults are like. They're obviously very compliant to the regime. Well, the historicity is such, although I think the actual Hitler Youth were more modified versions of the pre-Nazi Hitler rule of state. Well, anyway, beside the point, we suspect it would be a disaster if children did not receive the love and the care, the protection and the provision. It's a brave new world that considers culture without religion, and it seems to raise many problems, from discord to isolation, from poverty to indulgence, from war to love and devotion. I suspect that survival in this universe, in particular on this planet, I suppose, has always afforded such experiences. And assume that such is that we learn, hopefully for some good purpose, that we become wonderful persons in some spiritual sense, that inherit, well, quite simply an endless spiritual life in dimensions that we as children have really no conception of, only hope, as a child does when they wistfully consider what it must be like being a grown-up. And they have no idea, of course. They don't know the relationship really between mum and dad, what they do when they go off to work, what they find in their social life and conversations that just seem to the child to be endlessly boring. We are like this, I think, still when we become adults. Except that now the loving parent is not just thought about, but only thought about, just thought about. Perhaps they exist, perhaps they don't. Perhaps there's a loving heavenly dad in the terms of the Jesus story. Oh, that's wishful thinking, says the secular mind. Yes, but your wishful thinking is the reply that comes to them. Seems to be a very unhappy wish by comparison. I would rather assume that there's a loving, all-powerful God bringing us to eternal life by His grace and goodness, just like Mum and Dad were with ourselves, hopefully. And it is hope. Nothing but hope drives the reality of life, creativity, purpose, action. All turns on hope. And hope comes from imagination of what, in some sense, in our incredibly limited experience, we could imagine could be the goodness of the situation that we're actually in. What do you hope? Are they hopes that bring joy, peace, life and meaning, love, home, fellowship, communion with others, joy? Yeah, did I say joy before? Provision, protection. Or are they fears instead of hope that bring despair? Or is it just even worse somehow, a blank sheet? No hope, no fear, but no drive and fullness of life. Choose you this day what you hope for. Choose those hopes that bring fullness of life as you understand it, and learn quickly, here and now, as to how your hopes need to be modified or adjusted, that they be more efficacious in affording fullness of life and joy and peace and hope and love and provision and communion and safety. Bless you. Thank you, Heavenly Dad.